Hello from a very dark and rainy day in the end of May. Now it's actually the last day of May, and I'm here with another in and out video for you, talking about all the things that I have decluttered this month, but also all the things that have come into my life this month. Where do we start? I think we start with the things that came into my life, and the first thing is this. This is a sleeping bag I did buy secondhand. It's a very warm down sleeping bag, and I'm honestly so glad I got it. It did cost quite a bit of money. It was still less expensive than if I had bought it new, and I'm glad I bought it secondhand because I'm not really comfortable buying down products new. So it's a warm and great sleeping bag that hopefully will serve me for many years, because my current sleeping bag was just not warm and I was freezing almost every night when I was camping, and that was miserable. As you can maybe guess from that, I've already used my sleeping bag, and if you saw my latest video, you also know where I was and what I did there. But I'm going to talk about it a bit more in this video as well, but there I got something else. So it's a stick, another stick, but I'm thinking about like cutting something out of this that could possibly be jewelry at some point. The same, kind of goes for these pieces of mussel. So I have like one stone. My boyfriend picked it up for me. It has the shape of a heart. And then I also have, as I said, pieces of mussels. So it's kind of like mother of pearl-ish, but it's not as shiny and colorful as you would see it usually in stores, or I don't know where the mussels like that live. But these are just like North Sea mussel pieces, but I quite like the colors of them. And I was also thinking about kind of making earrings out of it. But you know, I've collected stones multiple times and I'm collecting more things now. And at some point I'm maybe gonna make jewelry out of it, or I'm just gonna declutter those things again. And because they're a piece of nature, that's not difficult, it's free, it's not really harmful. Only if I picked like a ton of it and take it through the world and put it somewhere else maybe. There's other stuff that came into my life and I thought it makes sense to share it. And that's a tent and like a new set of pots for camping. But those are things we're gonna use as a family. Even though only the sleeping bag kind of comes to my belongings this month, I'll still spend almost €1,000 on like outdoor stuff, and there's actually more things we need, and so I thought I'd just share that with you to give you a more realistic picture. And this is of course like a result of the privilege of having this job that I have now to earn more money, but it's also kind of things that we would have needed maybe during the past few years as my sleeping bag, because I was cold for years now, but that I'm finally like buying a new one because I have the means now, and because we also are going camping in summer again and we need more things or new things as a family because the old ones don't work anymore. But then that's already it, and we're gonna continue with the things that I have decluttered, which is books. The first one I decluttered is this one. I did pick that up from a public bookshelf a few months ago, I think, and I did read it. And it's a story about a woman that was kind of forcefully married to a man and has AIDS now, and how she kind of spends her last years caring for other women with AIDS. And it's like a very, very sad story. It's like a real story. It's her biography. Yeah, but it was a good book. And the next book I declutter is another book that I have bought actually from the English secondhand book sale in November of last year, and I've started reading that in February but never really wanted to continue, and now I finally finished it and it was okay. Like, it's a story of a man. It's very, very much focused on the role of a man a few decades ago, and it was good in a way that it did talk about the struggles of life, how your personality is not perfect, how you're sometimes lying to yourself or discovering new parts of yourself, and you're surprised by your own humanness maybe. But not my favorite book because of the perspective, because I couldn't really relate to the protagonist too much. I'm glad I finished it. Gonna bring it to another open bookshelf so someone else can read it. And then I have this book I started last month but finished this month that I did talk about, which is this one about doing nothing, and I'm still thinking about keeping it. So I'm keeping it for now, and maybe I'm gonna declutter it later. But that's another book I read, and I did talk about it more in last month's video, and I think that was more accurate because it was more fresh, because it's been almost a month since I finished it. But it's just about doing nothing and how to kind of be enough, and how much hustling is not actually productive or gonna make us happy or anything, and it's kind of just an invitation to do less. But I remember right now that I forgot something, which is my old sleeping bag. I do want to declutter it because it's actually the exact same weight as my new sleeping bag. It does maybe take up a little less space, even if compressed. But I don't think I really need it anymore. I'm a bit afraid that with the new warm sleeping bag, when I go camping in summer, it's going to be too warm. So I kind of don't want to really get rid of this before I know. But for now, I'm just gonna, I guess, put it on the decluttered pile, and like 90% sure I'm gonna declutter it, but I'm just gonna leave that little loophole in case I suddenly need a really not warm sleeping bag. But these are all the things I've decluttered already, but I also read more books, and we're gonna talk about them. So first are the books that I've already brought back to the library, because all the other books are from the library, so I don't have them here with me, but I still want to talk about them. Which the first one is Puddin', and it's the third book of this trilogy. It's not really a trilogy, but it's just a series of books that plays at the same place in the US, and it's just about a girl, or actually two girls, and they seem very different at first, but they have so much in common, and it's about friendship and love, and how we're just more than it sometimes appears, and other people are more than they maybe appear to be. It was a really nice story, really good read. The next one is Wir sind das Klima, which translates to something like We Are the Climate. I think the original book is actually written in English, so I'm gonna link you all the books down below that I've read, the Goodreads pages of them, so you can check them out if you want, and you don't really have to buy them. It's not a purchasing incentive or anything. And it's about this guy, and he just writes about how we fail sometimes to be the person that we want to be. It's about climate change, yes, and it's about taking action, but it's also about like how we sometimes we know things we do are bad, or we know what we should be doing, but we're still not doing it. Like this kind of inner fight of how can we make ourselves do the things and be the person we see ourselves as and we want to be. And I think that's really interesting, because I do struggle with that sometimes, of like thinking that I know what's necessary, that I know who I want to be, and still failing to accomplish that, failing to be this person, failing to be good enough, to restrict myself enough, to, I don't know, all the things. And that has to do with mental health, and there are different perspectives there as well. But I think it's an interesting thing. I've never read a book about that perspective. And then the next book is called Die Elenden, which means as much as the, I don't know, it's not the suffering, it's kind of the people that are seen as worthless, kind of. And it's about people in Germany that do not work, that do get like, how is it called? Social, like money from the government to survive, and how much our society is actually dependent on these people, kind of to look down on them and to feel better for themselves, and how just the system promotes people that don't work, and how the system is just making these people be the bad people, even though there's so many factors that contribute to having a job or not having a job, working or not working, like the ability, the possibilities, the situation and everything. And it's from a perspective of a person who has like a job, who's successful, but her parents are people that haven't worked a job in like decades. And I thought it was really interesting and really important thing to discuss as well, because in Germany there's very much so, and I think in many countries of the world, our worth is so much tied to how much money we earn or how much we work. And if you don't have a job, then you are considered a lazy and bad person, and it's thought that you should have the power to change that. But it's not that simple. And the next one is Turtles All the Way Down. So this is written by the author John Green, and he has written a lot of famous like young adult books, and I've heard of him and I've read half a book of his, I think. But I really liked this book. I really liked it because it gave such a great insight into the mind of a person, and I could relate so much, and it like I felt so understood. Even though I do not at all struggle with anxiety and intrusive thoughts as much as this person. But so it was a lot about mental health, but also about friendship and love and growing up and things changing and doing the right thing and the wrong thing. And it was a beautiful story and enjoyable to read. And the next one I have to read the title is Die Welt geht unter und ich muss trotzdem arbeiten, which means as much as the world is going down, the world is ending, and I still need to work. And it's again kind of about our work culture and how we tie our worth to jobs and how our work environment has to change to be sustainable, both for our mental health, for us, as well as for the planet and everything. And honestly, I do not remember too much about this book anymore. I also have to say that most of these books I read in like 24 hours, and most of them I read in the first half of the month. But I remember it was a good book. Then the next one I read was Der weiße Fleck, which translates to the white spot. And it's about like things you don't see, right? And it's about racism. And it's written from a bit of a different perspective. So there was a lot in this book that I already knew because I've read a lot of books about racism. I've read a lot of like people's thoughts on social media, and I've talked to a lot of people about racism, but there were also a few like new interesting perspectives, and one of them is actually mind-blowingly interesting but also disturbing, and it's about porn, and it's about how people enjoy certain kinds of videos that have a very, very racist connotation, that show discrimination, that show abuse, that show things like that, and how the search terms coexist with migration and refugees and things like that. And as I said, I think it's really interesting, but also really disturbing and enraging and concerning, I think. But it's maybe a very honest view into people's minds and feelings. But that was not the whole book. That was just one of the newer things that I learned from this book that I'd never heard of before. Oh, actually, I have that book here with me. That's the first book that I still have, that I still need to return to the library. But then we're moving on to the next book I read, which is Tage im warmen Licht, which translates to Days in the Warm Light. And it's about a person, I think in her mid-30s or something, and she returns to a village where she grew up. And there's just a lot of reconnecting with her past, reconnecting with some trauma, but it's also about her relationship with her teenage daughter and about understanding things from a different perspective, and it's about love and friendship. And I thought it was really wonderful, and I actually do enjoy it so much if protagonists of books and TV shows are not all teenagers, but are sometimes in their 30s, are mothers, are parents, have jobs, have different lives. And I think it's just so interesting to read because I can relate on a very different level. And I thought it was beautiful how also the relationship with her daughter was, and it was not all like rainbows and sunshine, but that's very realistic. And it's just, I like the book. I like to read it, and I think it's like a German book, so I'm not sure if it's available in English. I don't think so, but if you can understand German, I can highly recommend you check it out. And I will link it down below as well as all the other ones. And then we have Europa schafft sich ab, which means kind of Europe is canceling itself. And the subtitle says something about like how the values of the European Union are not valued, and what we can do against that. And it's a lot about like refugees and migration, and how many EU states are very much like failing to care for human rights of the people that are fleeing from really, really bad circumstances. And it's so very visible because this person is like a photojournalist, and he has some pictures in there, but also he just really describes the situations of people that are like refugees and trying to get to Europe, and how Europe is failing to save their lives, is failing to give them humane conditions, and is failing to acknowledge its responsibility. And it's a very depressing book, I have to say, but it's also true, and it's good to know, and hopefully things will change. And then the last book I just finished it last night, is Vom Ende der Einsamkeit. This is a very praised author, and I think he won something for this book, and it's something like about the end of loneliness is the title, and it's just about a boy who grows up to be a man and how he suffers loss and mental health struggles, but also his love, his family, his friendships. And it's very much so written from his perspective, so it almost seems like an autobiography, but I don't think it is. And it's well written. Like, I can definitely relate to a lot of what he says. I enjoyed it. But as another person actually said in one of my past In and Out videos where I talked about the books that I read, is that I more so really realize that, especially when it's fiction, and I enjoy books written by women more. That's not that I think all books written by women are better, but I think they're underrepresented still, as are people of color and other like minorities here. And so I think it does make sense to pay attention, to read like diverse books from like diverse authors from different backgrounds. And I enjoy that very much. And so I can still enjoy books written by white men, but oftentimes I relate more if it's not a white man that wrote the book. There's one more thing I want to talk about in this video because it's already getting long, and that is the trip we just were on. So if you didn't know, we went to northern Denmark to hike for a week. It was a long distance hike. It was my first attempt at a long distance hike, and there were some difficulties as well, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was a physical challenge. It was kind of a mental challenge. I wouldn't say it was very much so super difficult or very much more difficult than I thought, but I knew it was going to be challenging. I mean, like hiking for a week, hiking for 100 kilometers, it's kind of a lot, especially because I do not do that in my everyday life. But it was beautiful. I saw so many beautiful things. I still have so many mosquito bites, and some parts of my body still hurt. And I've shown you here a few pictures of this adventure, and I am actually kind of falling down a rabbit hole right now of researching through hiking and long distance hiking and hiking in general and long hikes in Germany and in Europe and how to do it and gear. And sometimes it really feels like hyper focus, or as that is described to me by people with ADHD. And I do not have a diagnosis like that or anything. But that's like something I'm deep into in the YouTube algorithm right now, and I'm thinking like, when can I go back out there? When can I hike more? How can I run? How can I just move my body for dozens of kilometers a day? Like, I want to be outdoors more. I want to be just in nature. And maybe I'm going to do more of that. Maybe that's going to be my reality. Maybe I'm, going to ditch reading books, because I didn't really even take a book on this trip because I thought I'm going to cut down on weight if I don't take any books. And maybe I'm just going to focus on hiking, but most likely not. And most likely this rabbit hole will lead to a nice meadow of staying home, going on walks, reading a bit, maybe hiking a bit more, and maybe it's just a phase. We will see. But thank you so much for watching. I do hope you had a great May. Let me know what your priorities and topics were this month, or what the things are that you really want to focus on in June. I do hope to go swimming more, actually, and to read a bit more again, because the last 10 days, as I said, I didn't really read. And maybe also plan a hike this summer, maybe. And then I'm gonna see you in my next video. I actually do not know yet what it's gonna be. So if you've watched until now, you have the chance to comment what you'd like to see, what kind of video, and maybe I'm gonna pick one of your suggestions and you will get the video you wanted to see. So thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna link you a video here that you can check out now. And I do also want to say thank you so much for everyone who's supporting me on Patreon or for just watching the video until now. So I do hope to see you in that video or in my next one that you can now suggest in the comments. And with that, it's the end. Goodbye.